Hello and a pleasant good morning to all of you, and welcome back to Morning Quest. We have a very fun episode today. As you guys all know, the gaming world was taken by storm with the PlayStation 5 Pro announcement. That's going to be a big chunk of what we talk about today. I also want to talk a little Echoes of Wisdom. That game is right around the corner. Want to talk about Bandai Namco announcing their Tokyo Game Show lineup, as well as a new Dragon Ball Sparking Zero trailer. Persona 3 The Answer just dropped. I've not gotten around to playing it yet, but by next Morning Quest, I should be pretty deep in it. I see we have a lot of early birds here. We have Patari, Crystal, and Sven over on YouTube, Treehouse, Big Pika, and Noct Flugel over on Twitch. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Look, again, I'm gonna spend a lot of this episode talking about that PlayStation Pro announcement. I definitely have a lot to say about it. I definitely want to cover here. Let's pull this up over here. Let's pull this up over here. So I definitely want to talk about it and cover probably what you've heard already, because I definitely want to talk about the price, but I have a few things I want to break down with this announcement that I don't think you'll hear anywhere else or might be a little harder to come by. But either way, look, to me, this breaks down in several ways. Okay, and here, let's blow this up a little bit so you can get a bit of a better look at this. All right, there we go. So, and good morning, Star Latte. Thank you for joining us. Ahmad, a lady of the lodge over on YouTube. So there's three things I want to talk about with the PlayStation 5 Pro. We have ownership, censorship, and the economics of it all. Those are the three things I want to get into. And when I say the economics of it all, I actually mean more than just pricing. But let's talk about the pricing first. So I know that's made a lot of waves. It's $700 for the PS5 Pro. And look, it is a very powerful machine. The PlayStation 5 Pro, make no mistake, is a very powerful machine, and it has 2 terabytes of memory, which is nothing to scoff at. At the end of the day, it's nothing to scoff at having 2 terabytes of memory. Here, let me pull this up too. But I'm not here to basically only shit on the PlayStation 5 Pro, because again, I do think there is a lot of value in this machine. I just think the price point is a little bit much, and we'll definitely get into that. I know there's been some discussions around whether this pricing is factoring in inflation, and we will most certainly get to that. But look, you're getting 2 terabytes of memory. You're getting faster loading times. You're getting frame rates that are improved. A game that was 60 frames per second might actually come out as 120. Either way, it's a very powerful machine. Here's the problem. Nobody asked for it. Nobody. Can you find me one person who played FF7 Rebirth, got between 30 and 60 frames per second, and just went, wow, man, if only I could play this at 120 frames per second. This goes into, in my opinion, one of the biggest issues. And here, let's actually give it its due diligence and play this a little bit. Where, again, it's like, there's some cool features here. There's some cool spec upgrades. There's some cool things to be excited about in theory. But again, the problem is that gamers were not asking for this. We were not asking for, 8K resolution, 120 frames per second. If those things matter to you, if those kind of specs and those kind of outputs matter to you, you should just go get a gaming PC. And one of the problems with what's going on here with the PlayStation 5 Pro is the pricing is getting so inflated that you might as well invest that money into a PC, something that you can update as time goes on. Because I know people are like, oh, a gaming PC is expensive, but the truth is to upgrade your gaming PC is becoming a lot more affordable than upgrading console generation to console generation, at the very least, as far as Sony is concerned. But let's bring back, I'm sorry, you look at these two. Is this really a make or break? Anyway, that's Fidelian Performance Kit, so excuse me on that. I thought that was PS5 Pro. But let's pull this back up again. So look, $700, you're not getting a disc drive, and you're not getting a vertical stand. So if you want the things that your base PS5 came with, you're going to pay an extra $80 for the disc drive and around an extra $50 for that stand. So you're looking at well over $800 for this PlayStation 5 Pro. Now, give me a second. There we go. Give me a second to pull up a little price comparison, courtesy of our buddy Jeff Keighley, who I'll always take an opportunity to take a shot at, but I'll defend him when he says something correct. Like, hey, Kingdom Hearts fans, don't get your hopes up. Believe him when he says stuff like that. So here he is laying out the prices of each PlayStation console generation. Here's one thing that he failed to include. He's pricing the PS5 Pro without the disc drive, where everything that came before it had a disc drive. So that $699 on the PS5 Pro is misleading. You're more likely to put that closer to $800 as opposed to $700 compared to the previous consoles. Now, I've seen some people say, hey, look, the PS3 was about that expensive accounting for inflation. Yeah, and the PS3 is Sony's weakest generation to date, perhaps only to be rivaled by the PlayStation 5, which leads us into our next issue with this big announcement, is that where are the games? Don't get me wrong, I've got a number of good games for the PlayStation 5, but the fact of the matter is the PS5 catalog is still insanely lacking when compared to even just the PlayStation 4, the generation that came before it. Now here, let me pull this back up again. We can let that roll. So, ultimately, if you were trying to sell these upgrades to people, the problem is these upgrades, they're only going to be applicable to about a dozen games. So you want me to spend $800 so that I can have upgraded specs on a dozen games in your catalog? This is the difference between this announcement and announcements that came before it. Is that, when the PS4 Pro came out, mind you, there were so many games those Pro specs could be applied to. But the problem with the PlayStation 5 Pro is there's literally only a dozen games where these specs are applicable. And not to mention, if you don't have a 4K TV or a state-of-the-art TV, then these specs also aren't going to mean much to you. So these are a lot of the problems that instantly come to mind when it comes to the PS5 Pro and its pricing. However, if I'm being honest, the pricing, as inflated and relatively egregious as it can be, is not the worst factor or is not the worst part of this announcement. Because that price is going to come down, as all prices do with these sorts of things. So again, while the price is more than what it should be, and while the price is a little bit, beyond its predecessors, especially when you include the disk drive, it's not the biggest issue. It's not the biggest issue when it comes to the PS5 Pro. Let's talk about, in my opinion, what I think the biggest issue is. And I see the chat is popping off. I definitely want to make time for the chat. I just know myself. I have so much to say about this. I just need to get it all out before I let myself get distracted. Let's talk about the first issue with the PlayStation 5 Pro that I was talking about earlier, which is going to be ownership. Okay, ownership. There's no disk drive. Now, you can buy the disk drive separately, but it's very clear that Sony is trying to follow in Microsoft's footsteps as opposed to Nintendo's. I know which horse I would follow, and they want to create a culture where you're buying your games digitally, right? Usually a console standard, like when the PS5 Pro launched, the standard was with the disk drive, but you had the option to get a cheaper version without the disk drive. Now, it seems like the marketing's been reversed, where now the one without the disk drive is being positioned to you as the standard, and the one with the disk drive requires not buying the disk drive version of the console, but going out, buying the disk drive separately, and you yourself assembling it. They're putting those extra steps there for a reason. Now, here's one of the reasons why I talk ownership. Right here, you have Final Fantasy 16 on the PlayStation 5. Now, one thing that drives people like myself crazy is when people say, oh, you don't really own the game. It's just a license to download the game. That is not true. I could burn my router right now. I could burn it in a burst of flames and have no internet access. And I can put this into my PlayStation 5, download the game, and play it. I won't have all the updates, right? I won't have all the things that they patched in, but I will have the physical copy, what's in here, right? What was available on day one. Again, I could burn that router, and this game is still available for me to play. My internet can be down. I can put this into my PlayStation 5, download it, and play it. Now, maybe you have some sort of semantic rebuttal, so let me make this easier for you. Here's the Nintendo Switch, the best-selling console of last generation and seemingly this generation too. What's beautiful about the Switch is not that it's disc, but that it's cartridge. So that when you put Xenoblade Chronicles in your Switch for the first time, the game is just ready to go. You don't need an internet access. You have the game. You own the game. So that's one segment of ownership that's important. That it's like, okay, look, if you are without internet, right? If you are without stable internet connections, you're going to need that sort of physical ownership. You're going to want that physical ownership. Now, here's the other thing that I don't see talked about too much with ownership. Here is Final Fantasy 16. I bought it. I own it. You know what a sign of ownership is? That you can lend it out to somebody. For instance, in college, I owned a car. A lot of my friends who lived in the house with me did not own a car. So I had a friend, Brian Laurentief, shout out to you, my brother, who, we went to college. It was a nice college, but it was in a really bad neighborhood. So when he would walk his girlfriend home at night, he would ask me, hey, can I borrow the car so I could just drive her up the hill and drop her off as opposed to walk through the neighborhood? And I would say, sure, it's my car, so I can lend you the keys. You could get in the car and drive it, come home and give me the keys back. That's a sign of ownership. You know what the problem with digital ownership is? You can buy Final Fantasy 16 digitally, and you cannot lend it to your friend. You bought FF16 digitally on the PS5. You want your friend to play it. Your friend doesn't have the money for it. Well, he's going to have to come over your house and play on your PS5. As opposed to myself, I had a friend who wanted to play, I had a friend who wanted to play Final Fantasy 10. And I was able to lend them my copy of Final Fantasy 10. And that was that. They didn't have to go out and buy it because their friend owned it and their friend was able to lend it to them so that they could play the game in full, even though they didn't have the money for it right now. That's one thing these gaming companies want to destroy. They hate the fact that one individual can buy Final Fantasy 16 and then lend it to a friend. With digital ownership, they completely eradicate that and force everybody who wants in the door to have to buy the game themselves. Now, again, I believe in supporting the companies you like. So like back in the day, when with music, I would download music for free. But if I really liked the album, I'd go buy the vinyl or I'd go buy the CD, something like that. So as far as ownership goes, right? One, you could be offline, no internet, owning the physical copy lets you play the game. Two, you can lend your physical copy to someone who doesn't own the game. Another sign of ownership. You know what another sign of ownership is? Resale. If I no longer want this game around, I can go sell it. I can sell it on eBay, or I can go trade it in at a game store. If I own the game digitally, I cannot do that. You can't resell it. There's no way to resell it. You cannot trade in the value, which is why people like me argue digital ownership, buying your games digitally, you do not own them. You do not own them, because if you own something, you can lend it out. If you own something, you can resell it. When you own digitally, there's no way to do that. The gaming companies love that because, again, now I can't lend this game out, and now I can't resell it or trade it in to buy another game. So ultimately, you're starting to understand why some companies, publishers, consoles may have an interest in getting rid of this physical ownership. Because again, it empowers the customer. It empowers the consumer. Again, my brother wanted to play a game. I could lend it to him. I no longer want the game. I can go trade it in for value and use it to buy a new game like Visions of Mana, right? There's things like that you're able to do with physical ownership that digital doesn't allow. And you're seeing why a company like Sony may want to take that power away from the customer. Now, let's take a little break. Let's take a little swig. Shout out to Nintendo, who has the opportunity to completely dominate the next generation. If they launch a Switch successor that's less than $500 and has physical games as a standard, they win. They win again. They already won with the Switch. They will win again, simply with a good price point and physical copies being the standard. Oh, that's good. That's good coffee. Lord knows I need it. All right, how are we doing? All right, about 15 minutes in. I think we might be able to get to everything. But I still have plenty to say. So, we talked about ownership. I could go on about that all day. This was supposed to be a Landy Lodge episode, by the way. But I am traveling again for work this weekend. However, I'm happy to say, after this weekend, busy season at my job is done. So we can go back to regular podcasts on the weekend, regular streams on the weekend. It's just summer gets very busy for me in my job. It requires me to travel a lot. But after this weekend, we're back to normal, baby, and I'm excited. Okay, let's get into the second thing here. By the way, what's up, Theo? Let's get into the second thing. We talked about ownership, right? Now, the second thing that's important about physical copies and why physical media matters is censorship, which unfortunately, censorship can be a politically charged term that a lot of people seem to only associate with one side of the aisle, but that's not how this works. Now, allow me to explain. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you Exhibit A and Exhibit B. Now, we're talking about censorship and why owning physical media matters. Keep something in mind. That if physical media for the gaming industry goes, and all you have is digital media without the sort of backdoor ownership that people like Theo advocate for, if all you have is digital media, no physical media in the space, then that means these companies can censor whatever they want, whenever they want. Now, we live in a time where, as shown by Exhibit A and Exhibit B, companies like Square Enix, this isn't so much a problem for them as it is others. But let's keep something in mind, okay? Exhibit A is our darling, beautiful girl, Tifa, in a bikini. Made everybody happy, right? Made everybody happy. Maybe not everybody. There are some people who would prefer not to have that sort of sexually explicit image in a game. That's fair to them. I don't believe in censoring it for everybody, but I do believe in personal censorship. If you yourself want to censor something that you don't want to see, you should be empowered to do so, right? Just like how on a social media platform, you can mute certain words or block certain words or block certain accounts. I totally believe in that and think empowering people to censor what they want to censor individually is a good thing. However, the sort of one size fits all is not going to work. Now let's look at Exhibit A and Exhibit B. Exhibit A, you got something for gamers like me. There's Tifa in the bikini, never looked better. Exhibit B, Final Fantasy 16. You have the romance between Dion and Terrence. Here's why I put these two as my examples. Because guys, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, culture can change and deem that one of these two is just unacceptable. They could deem that Exhibit A is too explicit and that Exhibit B is unacceptable for whatever reason. So in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it's possible that culture moves in a direction that you don't like. And if all these games and all this content is digital only, they can censor it out. Next thing you know, in 30, 40 years, Tifa's bikini doesn't look that way. In 30, 40 years, that scene with Dion and Prince Terrence was taken out of the game. I'm not being hyperbolic. We've seen this happen with movies. We've seen this happen with TV shows. We see this happening on all the streaming platforms with this older content. This is something that does happen, that over time, older media does get censored and does get updated for whatever modern culture deems appropriate. Now, again, what I'm trying to say, why censorship is an issue despite what side of the aisle you're on, is because as time goes on, either one of these examples can be deemed no longer appropriate. And if it goes the way that a lot of old movies and old TV shows on these streaming platforms go, they will take these segments out and you'll have no way of viewing, experiencing them again. However, for people like myself who own a physical copy, the day one version of that game is forever sealed in there, at least until the disc rots. But, you know, the way they make discs now, disc rot's not nearly as big of a problem as it was in, say, like the PS1 days. But because of physical ownership, you will always have the day one version. You will always have that. But if it all goes digital, then this stuff can just get wiped out. I hope I made my point well. I hope that made the point well, right? Because I do think sometimes censorship can be a little bit charged. But the fact of the matter is, no matter what it is you believe, no matter what it is you prefer, culture can move in a direction where what you used to enjoy, be it Exhibit A or Exhibit B, is deemed no longer acceptable. That is not a world I want to live in. I don't think it's a world you want to live in. And that's why physical ownership is important. Trey Hill says Walt Disney getting his SIGs photoshopped out is an easy example that comes to mind. They do this with everything. That's why I know that this might sound hyperbolic, but this happens with everything. Photographs, books, movies. Like, best argument against censorship on the platform I've seen. Well, yeah, because I'm not trying to come at it from one side of the aisle or one angle. This applies to everybody. And I know we have the kind of discourse we have now, and that's fine, but this applies to everyone across the board. And again, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, maybe culture moves in a direction you don't like, and something you used to enjoy is deemed unacceptable, is deemed inappropriate for a modern audience. We don't know which way the pendulum swings. Hopefully, 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time, this gets left the hell alone. But that's not for us to decide. What is for us to decide is whether or not we can own these things in their raw base form, which is something I've always supported. All right. And again, guys, I mean, look, it happens with everything. Anyway, let's move on now. I think the last thing I wanted to discuss was, quote unquote, the economics of it all. Again, guys, I could talk about this stuff all day. Like I said, this was supposed to be a full Lodge episode, but with my weekend travel plans, unfortunately, we'll have to settle for Morning Quest. All right. I got one last thing I did want to discuss. So give me a second. Right. Perfect. Now, I promise not to break an arm, jerking myself off here, but this was my general take on this. Why the price point is such a problem. So you got to understand, first of all, let me say this. Do not get your economics from the game industry or a gaming content creator. Allow me to say that again. Do not get your economics from the gaming industry or gaming content creators. Both have proven to be inept. I'm not absolved from this, right? I'm a gaming commentator on this platform. I'm not an economist. So let me just make that clear. However, I know a thing or two about a thing or two. They want $800 for this console. $800 with the disc drive, vertical stand, taxes, whatever you say. This was my take over on Twitter, over on X, where you should follow me. This isn't about money as much as it is about value. Think about value when it comes to things like this, not money. Money can get tricky, right? Think about value. Let me explain. For the price of a PS5 Pro with a disc drive, you can buy a standard PS5 and a Nintendo Switch. So tell me, what has more value? You have $800. You can have one PS5 Pro, or you could have a PlayStation 5 and a Nintendo Switch. Now, I know some people will choose the PS5 Pro, but most people will pick the PS5 plus the Switch. Know what I'm saying? Still charges for the iPhone, not gonna lie. I mean, yeah, but this is the thing about, if people keep showing up to buy it, they have no reason to change their pricing. Sven Garudo-san says, I do want to live in a world where they take pro-slavery out of my cartoons. Thanks. That, to me, is a complete false equivalency. There's a difference between something like that, which has now been deemed illegal and has been deemed that, and then there's, one second. Where's my guy right here? Neither one of these can live up to that. But I would also argue, Sven, that you don't want those censored out, right? Because if you censor it out, you're now giving a false representation of history. You want to leave that in your cartoons because you want to show, hey, look how this was deemed appropriate back then. Again, I'm glad we're back on the censorship argument, Sven, because this is a good point too. Even if you agree with the censorship, you should still want to leave it in the property. You should still want to leave it, because if you censor it, you're now hiding it away. You didn't make it go away. You're hiding the truth of what used to be deemed acceptable. If you leave it in, it creates an actual representation of history that people can learn from. If you take it away, there's nothing to learn from it anymore. You didn't fix anything. You didn't fix the problem. But if you leave it in, people can actually take it for themselves and see it for themselves. But if you remove it, you're not fixing anything. The point is, Sven, you don't want a world where people can choose what it is you can and can't see. Now, Sven, remember what I said earlier? People should have the right to personally censor. If you as an individual want to censor that, that should be available to you. So for instance, I don't know that's the only censorship I know is happening on Disney Plus. That is not the only censorship happening on Disney Plus. I'll get into that. But let's say, I don't know what cartoon you're referencing, but don't you think it would be better if the customer had an option to view it in its raw viewing or to view it in the censored viewing? Right, Sven? Wouldn't it be better to give the customer the option to view things in their raw form? Or like you said, you're like, hey, I actually would prefer that be censored. And then you can choose the censored version, right? Why is only the censored version available to the customer? Shouldn't both be available? And this is what I'm saying, Sven, where I'm like, even if you agree with the censorship, you should still want the raw form available. It should still be available. Know what I'm saying? Again, you should have the right to censor what you yourself don't want to see. But you should not remove media in its raw form. You have to preserve these things. Because again, fun fact, guys, I think it's something crazy. Like 95% of the movies made before 1950 are gone. Gone forever. The film is rotted and ruined. Like 90 to 95% of the cinema made before 1950 is gone. This is what happens if you don't have things physically preserved. Point being, back to these small economics. Think about things in terms of value. When you're making a purchase, think about it in terms of value. Okay? So $800 for one console with slightly upgraded specs, or $800 for two consoles fully capable of playing their catalogs. Sven says it is available in a dark corner of the internet, and I believe it should stay there. And for me, dude, I think it should be on Disney Plus. I really do. I think you can put the censored version forward, but the customer should always have the option. Do not hide history away, man. That's a slippery slope. You do not cover up history, no matter what it is. No matter what it is, history has to be preserved in its raw form, in one way or another. That's just what I believe. You're free to disagree. I welcome people who disagree with me on my channel all the time. So Sven, no hard feelings about us disagreeing, but I'm glad you're here. This is why I always say the chat makes these things better, because I see a lot of you were agreeing with what I was saying. I'm glad Sven spoke up. so that we could have a further conversation, a little bit of further back and forth. Zeb says, I think censorship of that stuff is bad because the world isn't all sunshine and flowers. If you don't want to see it or can't handle it, then no disrespect, but then don't buy the game or watch the show. Zeb, right on the money. Right on the money, Zeb. That's what I'm saying. You yourself, the individual, have the power to choose what you do and don't see. But because you yourself don't want to see something, or because a certain company deems something inappropriate, doesn't mean you should alter these things. Leave them as they are. But anyway, I think I'm going to wrap it up on the PS5 Pro for now, because we are coming up on time and I want to get to a few other stories. This has been awesome. I mean, if you guys would be interested in doing a full Landy Lodge episode on this, let me know. That's what this was supposed to be. We're 30 minutes in. I know we can keep going, but I do got to get to the rest of the show. So give me a second. Let's keep this going. Let's talk about something. I do like to keep it positive around here. So let's talk about something a little bit more positive, a little bit more exciting. Let's talk about our friends over at Bandai Namco, who announced their Tokyo Game Show lineup and schedule. Now, again, just like when we talked Square Enix, this is just the lineup they're announcing now. Usually updates are made as we get closer to the event, usually things that they're holding for a surprise or just announcement for a later date. So let's move down. Their main booth is going to have Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, Sword Art Online Fractured Daydream, Sin Duality, Tales of Graces. Then we have Taiko no Taitsujin, and that's pretty much everything they've announced for now. Obviously, our eyes are on Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. That's something we've been talking about a lot on the show and this channel. I'm hoping it becomes the biggest fighting game in the world. There's a giant gaping void in my life for a fighting game that really, for lack of a better term, tickles my fancy. Again, I love Street Fighter, I love Tekken, but they just didn't quite do it for me. I'm hoping Sparking Zero does, and the fact that it's a 3D fighter always helps. That's so good. That Covfefe looks good. It's so good, man. Courtesy of Lady of the Lodge. Star Latte. So check it out. Check it out. You know what the biggest disappointment of this is? That Bandai Namco didn't announce a Soul Calibur 7 showcase. Unbelievable. How dare they? But speaking of Sparking Zero, a new trailer just dropped. And funny story about this trailer. We're going to watch the trailer. By the way, guys, if we do any more updates on Daima, I've got to mute the audio. I got a copyright strike last week for playing the Dragon Ball Daima audio, which again, I know we talk some anime here. I would talk much more anime if these companies weren't rigorously copyright striking everybody. But so a new Dragon Ball Sparking Zero trailer dropped, and we're going to watch it. There's some very exciting things that I look forward to talking about with you guys, but let me tell you the bigger story. Not the bigger story. Let me tell you a story that's surrounding it. So I'm not going to name names, right? Because it's not my place to do so. But a big content creator accidentally uploaded and released their reaction to the trailer early. So the trailer was supposed to come out at a certain time. A big content creator who had pre-recorded their reaction uploaded it about an hour early. Lance, I was able to get it taken down. It was just annoying. But anyway, they've done it to me before too. I did what did I do a video on? I did a video on Kyrie, and I included like 15 seconds of a Dragon Ball clip, and I got hit for it. And it's one of my bigger videos too, so it sucked. Anyway, but you know what? I don't do it for the money anyway. Let's talk about what happened. So this big content creator uploaded and released his reaction like an hour early. Now, that sucks. It got dropped earlier. But here's what a lot of people are talking about. Now, this may be exclusive to Bandai Namco. I am not going to accuse any other developer of doing this, any other third party, first party of doing this, any other content creator. Like, I want to make that clear that with the evidence we have, this may be exclusive to Bandai Namco. But what's ticked a lot of people off is it's like, hey, so these big content creators, they're not actually reacting live to this. They're not learning about all this in the same way we are, right? Like, they pretend to be shocked at the announcement, but the truth is that a lot of these developers will send them the trailer early. They get this information early and they get to react early to it or prepare their reaction. You see what I mean? This is what people realize. Like, hey, if you already had that trailer and that reaction ready to go, then you weren't waiting for us You weren't waiting to experience it with us at a certain time. Now, for some people, this is not a surprise, but for some people, it really was. That when these trailers are due to have their official release at a certain time, the truth is a lot of these big content creators have had their hands on that trailer for a while. And they've already got their reaction to it. So it took a lot of people by surprise because, we all know that, big content creators, it's essentially access journalism. They get the copies early, they get the merch for free, they get all that. And that's no problem with that. If you worked for it, if you worked hard and you built a platform, then you deserve that kind of stuff. So don't get my words twisted there. If you've built a platform that developers thinks is worthy for advertising stuff, then you deserve to get the game for free. You deserve to see the trailer early, right? I'm not coming at any of that. But I think what's upsetting a lot of people is that, a lot of content creators, they create this image that they're getting everything at the same time as you, or they're experiencing things in the same way you are, but it's not. When you eventually become big enough, if you choose to engage with that world, you essentially become an access journalist. And then you get access in exchange for positive reviews. I mean, you've seen the way whether it's Jeff Keighley or IGN, you've seen the way all these platforms are carrying water for Sony. They're carrying, they see the reaction. They see people are upset. They know it's a ripoff, but then Jeff will give some bullshit inflation argument that isn't even accurate, doesn't include the disk drive, and doesn't include the fact that it's lacking a catalog, right? Anyway, again, no disrespect to Jeff. The industry can do a lot worse than Jeff Keighley. People got to remember that. The industry can do a lot worse than that man. But anyway, it was just something that came to a surprise of a lot of people, All right, let's get into Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I think this is going to be an absolute blast. Let me pause this. Don't want us to lose it here. Let me unmute this, turn this up. All right. Let's give this a look. Forgive Sven. I don't know. It looks really hype. It does look really hype, and I'm really excited for it. All right, let's watch this. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, the GT character trailer. GT, what many thought was a dead corner of the Dragon Ball universe, will be included in Sparking Zero. Here's all I'm going to say. Personally, I prefer Dragon Ball Super to Dragon Ball GT. How are we doing on time? Oh boy, we are running out of time. We may not get to do Echoes of Wisdom. Actually, we'll do it quick. Let's do this quick. We could roll through it. Anyway, let's let this roll, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero GT, and I'll share my thoughts.
My name isn't Kakarot. Now I'm mad. It was you against the universe. See ya.
Let's go, baby.
Really, though, my size has nothing to do with this. I'm stronger than I've ever been.
Grandpa, you totally forgot about me, didn't you?
I'll probably get hit with another strike for this song.
That was close. I need to keep my head on the game, or I'm gonna get left in the dust.
Hey, let me turn this down for a second. Let me just say this. I prefer Super to GT, but GT had better designs and better music. 100%. Super Saiyan 4 kicks the shit out of Super Saiyan God or Super Saiyan Blue, and the soundtrack of GT was fire. So again, I prefer Super, especially for the latter half of the series with Zamasu and Tournament of Power, but GT had some of the coolest designs the series has ever seen and some of the best music the series has ever seen. And yo, Oob, putting in Oob. Let's go, baby. Here we go.
Grandpa.
You better be ready.
So sick.
I'm feeling pretty strong right now.
What I can appreciate about GT is that it wanted to bring Dragon Ball back to its roots, making Goku a kid again, the whole monkey motif. Really cool.
Sorry to tell you this, but there's too much of a power gap between you and me.
I will rule the universe.
I can taste your fear. It is very sweet. I can feel the terror that this bridal body accentuates.
Times 10? Kamehameha!
So
Well then,
sick.
your punishment for abusing the Dragon Balls will be extinction. I stand above all other Shadow Dragons as the mighty One Star.
I want to say, I wasn't a fan of the villains in GT. Omega Shenron was my shit. I'm telling you, the idea that the heroes had abused the whole Dragon Ball ritual, so good. So, like, GT conceptually was strong. It's just the execution was weak at times. But conceptually, the idea of grounding Dragon Ball in its roots, so strong.
Dragon Fist! Explosion! Useless! Behold, as I reduce all of reality to nothingness.
I won't let scum like you get away with this!
All of your struggles are meaningless in the face of the Dragon Ball's combined power.
You mean there's still someone stronger than me? Let's fuse, Kakarot. This is going to be special. I can feel it. Fusion! Ha! Victory is mine!
Gogeta. And call me crazy, I always preferred Gogeta to Vegito.
Time to wrap up this show.
We've reached the finale. You've resisted until the very end.
Let's go! Ultra Big Bang!
Begone!
Kamehameha!
The hopes of everyone in the universe! Let's do this!
Nah, Theo, I'm 100% with you. Super Saiyan 4, way cooler than Super Saiyan Blue. Again, I prefer Super. Let me make that clear. But Super Saiyan 4, way too goated. All right. Let's move into a little bit of Echoes of Wisdom. This game does come out soon. I'm looking forward to it. We've seen some of this. Let me move.
Is stolen away.
Let me move us along.
Real creature called
I'm going to mute this while I talk about it. But I am very excited for Echoes of Wisdom. I think that, you know, we talked about it a little bit on a previous episode. A lot of people were hoping that this would be some kind of like return to standard OG Zelda kind of puzzle solving. It seems to be drawing a lot of inspiration from Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, in the sense that all these obstacles have damn near infinite solutions to them, which I've talked about that I think that's great, honestly, for traversing the world. But one thing I'm hoping from Echoes of Wisdom here is that the puzzles have some stricter solutions, as opposed to, as we can see, while traversing the world, you can do almost damn near anything to get to where you need to get to. Because I think, don't get me wrong, I think that's cool, but I think you get to a certain point of the game that you're just so cracked, right? You get so many items, so many abilities that you could just figure everything out with like anything, or you could just throw shit at the wall and eventually get it right. I do hope that in the dungeons, in some of the more stricter segments, that the solution to these puzzles are just more exclusive, more singular. One of the things I absolutely love about Zelda is that it makes you critically think, right? Gaming has a bad rap for being some sort of like brain dead activity, but games like Zelda actively fight against that sort of perception when it requires you to really critically think to figure out that one singular solution to your problem. Now, you know, I've always made the argument, like, look at the face of someone watching TV and look at the face of someone playing video games. Who looks more alive to you, right? The person watching TV, they're just... Yet the person playing video games is like, what is this? Ah, shit. Like, you know, who looks more alive, right? That's always been my argument, is who looks more alive, the person watching TV or the person playing the game and like, ooh, ah. You know, it's one of the reasons why I like fighting games. It activates that adrenaline in me, you know? It's so cool. All right, preach. That's my only problem. Yeah, I Captain Kai. I love Breath of the Wild. I love Tears of the Kingdom, but I want those singular solutions back. I really do. Honestly, this looks like the missing Pokemon game in between Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield. Yeah. I get that. That's sort of top down. People have trouble setting limits on themselves. If you don't want to cheese it, don't cheese it. Well, you know, it's funny, Sven. Maybe I could take a page out of your book with that, and then you could apply that same logic to censorship. So touche on that one, my friend. All right. With that said, I'm actually going to wrap up today's episode here. I did want to talk about this a little bit more, but I am coming up on time. Got to get to work. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Love doing Morning Quest. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know this one was a little bit spicier than some previous episodes. So drop in the comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree, disagree, in between. Would love to hear from you. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Love doing this show. I'm going to be traveling this weekend for my job, but like I said, this is it. After this weekend, busy season is over, and we can go back to Landy Lodge podcast Sundays, long stream Saturdays. We'll go right back after this weekend. But anyway, we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I will see you all on the next one. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. And I'll see you all